It was supposed to be just another Thursday. Another day of me standing 2 feet to his right, scanning crowds, memorizing faces, and never letting mine betray a thing. But then I found myself reading about Usham and me in a glowing screen at 2 in the morning, in a piece of fanfiction written by some anonymous stranger who saw things no one was supposed to see. The worst part? I couldn't stop reading. And the even worse part? Neither could he. My name is Ryan Cole, 30 years old, former Marine, now private security. My life runs on discipline. Eat, train, protect, repeat. Feelings don't get in the way of doing your job, at least they're not supposed to. But standing beside Ethan Hale, the golden boy candidate for governor of New York, has always been different. He's everything I'm not. Polished, articulate, adored. The kind of man people listen to when he walks into a room. And yet, when the crowd is gone, when it's just him loosening his tie in the back seat of the campaign car, when his laugh slips out unguarded, there's a quietness between us that feels like home. I never let myself name it. Couldn't. Until that night when Ethan slid a laptop across the table. His face caught somewhere between amusement and something sharper. "Ryan," he said, his voice low. "You need to read this." The page was already open. Black text on white background. Thousands of comments scrolling below it. A story, a fan-written saga, about Ethan Hale, the rising star politician. And his bodyguard. About us. First, I thought it was a joke. Some overzealous supporter weaving fantasies. But as I read, my throat tightened. The writer described things no one should have noticed. The way I stand just slightly in front of him at crowded events. The way his hand brushes the small of my back when he passes behind me. The way our eyes linger too long. It was exaggerated. Sure, scenes where he grabbed my tie in a hotel hallway, or where I pulled him into a kiss behind the campaign bus, but it was too close. Too damn close to the things I had buried. And Ethan. He wasn't laughing. He wasn't embarrassed. He was looking at me like the story wasn't entirely fiction. "People ship us," he said softly, almost like it was funny. But his eyes didn't waver. They were searching, testing. I tried to brush it off. People have too much time on their hands. But he leaned forward, elbows on the table, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his tie loose. "Tell me, Ryan, if it wasn't fiction, what would you do?" That was the question I couldn't answer. Not then, not with the lines of my job carved so deep in me. Protect him. Serve him. Never want him. But the world doesn't care about rules, not when politics are involved. The fanfic spread like wildfire. Journalists joked about it. Opponents mocked it. And suddenly, it wasn't just a secret corner of the internet, it was headlines, debates, whispers in hotel lobbies. Is governor candidate Ethan Hale gay? Who is his bodyguard? Really? My presence, once invisible by design, was now a spotlight I never asked for. And Ethan, he didn't run from it. He started looking at me differently in public. Noticing me, letting his hand linger on my arm just a second too long. Smiling at me when cameras flashed. It was reckless, dangerous, and it made me want things I shouldn't want. I still remember the night it all cracked open. We were in a hotel suite in Albany after a brutal day of rallies. He'd given a speech that nearly broke him, the press hammering him about policies and scandals that weren't even his. I stood by the window, keeping watch, while he collapsed into an armchair, staring at nothing. "You ever get tired of being invisible?" he asked suddenly. I turned. "What do you mean?" He looked up at me, eyes tired but burning. "You're always there. You save me from everything, angry protesters, collapsing stages, my own exhaustion, and no one even knows your name. That's the job," I said quietly. "And what about you? Don't you want more than just the job?" My chest tightened. He wasn't asking about security anymore. He was asking about us. I tried to answer, but he stood, walked over, and stopped just inches away. His cologne mixed with the faint scent of whiskey he hadn't finished. He looked at me like the fanfic wasn't just a story, it was a prophecy. "Tell me it's not real," he whispered. But I couldn't. Because in that moment, with him so close, it felt more real than anything I'd ever known. And when his hand touched my jaw, gentle, hesitant, like he was afraid I'd pull away, I couldn't. For the first time, I broke my own rule. I kissed him. It wasn't sweet. It wasn't practiced. It was desperate. All teeth and hunger and months of silence breaking at once. His hands gripped my suit jacket, pulling me in like he'd been waiting for this longer than I had. And I let myself want it. For once, I let myself need him. When we finally pulled apart, his forehead rested against mine, his breath unsteady. "So maybe they weren't wrong," he murmured, and I wanted to laugh and cry all at once. But the world outside that hotel room wasn't kind. And no fanfic, no secret kiss was going to make it easy for us. That night was the beginning of everything. And the beginning of every danger. Because the moment Ethan Hale chose to see me not just as his bodyguard but as a man he could love, we both became targets not just of the press, but of those who would rather see him ruined than let him lead. And me? I wasn't sure if I was strong enough to protect him from the one thing I couldn't fight. The truth. The morning after that kiss, the world felt different. Not because the sun rose in some new way, but because I couldn't look at Ethan without remembering the taste of him, the heat of his body pressed against mine, the quiet desperation in the way he'd clung to me. But there was no room for indulgence. At 6 a.m., the hotel corridor was buzzing with staff, aides, and campaign strategists. Phones rang, coffee cups clattered, and everyone was already on edge because of the latest smear article. Politics doesn't wait for lover lust, or whatever the hell last night had been. When I knocked once and entered his suite, Ethan was at the window, tie half done, staring out at the city skyline as though it were something he had to conquer. His reflection caught mine in the glass. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "About last night," he said finally, his voice measured, almost too careful. I stiffened, professional mask on. It shouldn't have happened. He turned then, eyes locking on mine, sharp and unreadable. "You regret it?" I didn't answer. Regret wasn't the word. I regretted the timing, the risk, the impossibility of it, but not him. Never him. Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Ryan, I don't regret it. Not 1 second of it. And God help me, that nearly undid me right there." But a knock at the door interrupted the fragile moment. His campaign manager, Diane, bustled in with folders, a Bluetooth in her ear, and the kind of energy that left no oxygen in the room. "Ethan, you've got the radio interview in 20 minutes, then a donor brunch," she rattled off. "Also, the press is circling that ridiculous fanfiction story again. We'll need a statement to kill it off before it grows legs." Ethan glanced at me. I forced my face blank. "Maybe ignoring it is the best strategy," he said smoothly. Diane scoffed. "It paints you as having a secret romance with your bodyguard. People are running with it because it makes you look mysterious and worse, dishonest. We'll need to clarify." Her words hit like a bullet. I was trained to take hits, but not like this, not when the truth was sharper than any rumor. Ethan's hand brushed the edge of the desk, like he was grounding himself. "I'll think about it." "Don't think too long," Diane warned, already halfway out the door. Silence returned, heavy and suffocating. Ethan looked at me again, and in that look was 1,000 unspoken things: fear, longing, defiance. "We can't hide forever," he murmured. The campaign trail grew brutal in the weeks that followed. Every handshake, every smile, every camera flash felt like it might expose us. And yet, in stolen moments, late-night drives between towns, quiet pauses in hotel elevator suite were something more than candidate and bodyguard. Sometimes it was just the brush of his knee against mine, or the way his fingers lingered on my wrist when he handed me a pen. Sometimes it was more. But the world wasn't blind. It started small. Blurry photos on Twitter of Ethan looking at me instead of at the crowd. Captions like, "These two are too close to be just candidate and staff." Then a gossip column claiming inside sources had seen us together late at night. By the time the local news picked it up, it was no longer a joke. At a press conference in Syracuse, a reporter shouted from the crowd, "Mr. Hale, are the rumors true about you and your bodyguard?" Flashbulbs erupted. Microphones shoved forward. I stiffened at his side, every muscle tight, ready to shield him, to drag him out. Ethan didn't flinch. He smiled, calm and steady. "I'll address policy questions today. Personal rumors aren't worth my time." But when we got back in the car, his mask cracked. He pressed his palms to his eyes, exhaling sharply. "They're not going to let it go," he said. I kept my gaze on the road ahead. "Then let them talk." His laugh was bitter. "You don't get it, Ryan. In politics, Rumors become truths faster than facts do. And if I'm seen as lying, if I'm seen as hiding, it could cost me everything. His voice broke on the last word, and I hated myself for wanting to reach across the seat, to take his hand, to tell him he didn't have to face it alone. But I didn't, because protecting him meant staying invisible, even as the world painted me into the spotlight. 2 nights later, the smear campaign escalated. I was in the hallway of yet another hotel when my phone buzzed. A link from a blocked number. Against my better judgment, I opened it. The headline read, "Governor Candidate's Secret Lover Exposed. The Bodyguard Affair." Below it was a photo, grainy but damning. Ethan and me, leaving a side entrance of a building, his hand brushing my back, our eyes locked. Anyone could twist it into what they wanted. My stomach dropped. I rushed into his suite. He was pacing, phone in hand, Diane's voice tinny through the speaker. "Yes, I saw it," Ethan snapped. "No, I'm not making a public denial. It only feeds the fire." He hung up when he saw me. For once, Ethan Hale, the man who could charm a room of skeptics, looked scared. "They'll spin this into a scandal," he said quietly. "They'll say I lied, that I hid who I am." I swallowed hard. "Then tell them the truth." He froze, eyes wide. "You'd risk that?" I stepped closer, heart pounding. "I'd risk anything for you." For a moment he just stared. Then he exhaled, like the weight of the world was pressing down on him. "Ryan, if we do this, there's no going back." The next day, the opposition's ads hit like a hammer. Dark colors, ominous music, a narrator's voice sneering. "Ethan Hale says he stands for family values. But what's he hiding? Secret hotel meetings, late-night rendezvous. Can you trust a man who lies about who he loves?" I watched it play on a hotel TV, bile rising in my throat. They weren't just coming for him, they were coming for us. And it was working. Poll numbers slipped. Donors hesitated. Staff whispered behind closed doors. That night, Ethan sat across from me in the quiet of his suite, his tie discarded, his hands trembling just slightly around a glass of water. "Maybe this is it," he said. "Maybe they've already won." I leaned forward, fierce. "Don't say that. You've fought too hard to give up now." He looked at me, really looked, his eyes glassy. "Ryan, I don't know if I'm strong enough to fight them and love you at the same time." His words cut deep, because I knew what he meant. His campaign was his life's work. And me? I was the complication no one planned for. "Then let me carry it," I said, my voice breaking. "Let me be the one who takes the hit. If stepping away helps you win, stop." His voice was sharp, desperate. He set the glass down with a thud. "Don't you dare talk like that. You're not just expendable." The silence between us was unbearable. Then, softly, almost like a confession, he added, "You're the only thing that feels real in all of this." And that was when I realized this wasn't just about politics anymore. This was about us, about whether we could survive a world that wanted to tear us apart. I thought I was prepared for anything. I thought nothing could shake me. But I wasn't prepared for the day Ethan Hale stood on a stage in front of hundreds, cameras flashing, the world watching, and said words that would change everything. "I've been accused of hiding, accused of lying about who I am. So let me be clear. I am not ashamed of who I love. I am not ashamed of the man who has stood by my side, not just as my protector, but as my partner." The crowd erupted. Gasps, cheers, outragite was chaos. I stood just behind him, every nerve alive, my heart pounding like a drum. He had done it. He had said it. And in that moment, I didn't know if we had saved him or destroyed him. The moment Ethan said those words on stage, the air split like a lightning bolt. Cheers and shouts clashed with jeers and boos. Flashbulbs turned blinding. Reporters surged forward. Microphones shoved like weapons. And me? I stood rigid, ears ringing, my body a wall between him and the chaos. I wasn't just a bodyguard anymore, I was suddenly part of the story. When we got off stage, staffers scrambled, their faces pale, voices raised. Diane practically exploded the moment the door shut behind us. "Are you out of your mind?" she shouted, slamming a folder onto the table. "You just admitted to a relationship with your bodyguard on live television. Do you realize what this means?" Ethan stood tall, shoulders squared, though I could see the tremor in his hands. It means I stopped lying. It means I told the truth. The truth, Diane hissed. The truth is political suicide. Her eyes flicked to me, sharp and accusing, like I was the virus that had infected her perfect candidate. I clenched my jaw. I'd taken bullets before, but never like this, never made to feel like my existence itself was a liability. Ethan stepped closer, his voice calm but firm. If voters can't accept me for who I am, then maybe I don't deserve their vote. The room went dead quiet. Diane shook her head, muttering under her breath as she stormed out, phone already in her ear. The rest of the team followed, the door clicking shut behind them, leaving just the two of us in the silence. You just set the whole campaign on fire, I said softly. Ethan exhaled, dragging a hand through his hair. Then let it burn. He turned toward me, his eyes raw and unguarded. Because I'd rather lose with the truth than win with a lie. The fallout was immediate. Cable news anchors dissected every word. Talk radio screamed betrayal or bravery, depending on the station. My face flashed on TV screens next to his. Strangers on social media speculated about my background, my family, my past. I had been trained to stay invisible. Now I was everywhere. At the diner we stopped at the next morning, two men at the counter sneered, loud enough for us to hear. Guess New York's got itself a first lady with stubble. I tightened, fists curling. But Ethan touched my arm under the table, steadying me, grounding me. His touch said, don't. Not here. Not now. Still, the words stung. Not for May could handle being mocked, but for him. For what he risked just by looking at me in public. The threats came next. Anonymous emails. Phone calls in the dead of night. One letter slid under the campaign office door. If you keep flaunting this, you won't make it to election day. I doubled the security detail. Checked every car, every hotel room, every stage entrance twice over. My instincts screamed danger at every corner. But Ethan, he didn't back down. At a town hall, when a man in the audience barked, "How can you claim to represent families when you can't even start one yourself?" Ethan met his gaze without flinching. Families are built on love, not on narrow definitions, he said. And I will fight for every family, including my own. His voice cracked on that last word. My own. I felt it like a brand against my chest. But politics is blood sport, and our opponents smelled blood. One night, Diane burst into his suite, face pale, laptop in hand. They're running with it. Every outlet. They found the fanfic. My stomach dropped. She spun the screen around. There it was. The story. The very same words that had started this entire storm. Now plastered on news sites with headlines like fantasy or reality. Fiction that predicted Hale's secret romance. Commentators laughed about it on late-night TV, mocking Ethan as if he were some character in a soap opera. I wanted to throw the laptop against the wall. Instead, I stood there, silent, while Ethan read the lines on the screen, his jaw tightening. They're not laughing at me, he said finally. His eyes lifted to mine. They're laughing at us. And I realized then how deep the wound went, not the politics, not the polls, but the indignity of having something so fragile, so private, turned into a circus act. The polls crashed. Donors pulled out. Editorial boards called for Ethan to withdraw. I overheard Diane whispering to another aide. He could still save face if he ended it now. Blame the bodyguard. Say it was a mistake. Move on. The words sliced me open. Because maybe she was right. Maybe I was the anchor dragging him down. That night, I packed my bag. When Ethan came back from yet another brutal interview, he found me zipping it shut. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice sharp. "I'm leaving," I said. "If I stay, they'll keep using me to hurt you." His face went pale. "You think walking away will fix this? It might save your campaign." He stepped forward, his voice low and fierce. "Damn the campaign. Ryan, you don't get it. I don't care if I win or lose if it means losing you." I froze. My throat closed. I had never seen him so raw, so desperate. "You think I came out on that stage for politics?" he whispered. "I did it for you, for us, because I'm done hiding." His hand caught mine, firm and trembling all at once. "Stay, please." And for the first time in years, I broke. The walls I had built, the discipline I lived by, the iron maskee, let it all go. I dropped the bag. and I stayed. The final weeks of the campaign were war. Protesters outside every venue. Supporters rallying twice as loud. News crews hungry for every misstep. But Ethan stood taller than ever, his speeches burning with fire he hadn't had before. He spoke of truth, of love, of courage. And when he said the word we, he didn't just mean voter, she meant us. I stayed close, always close. Not just as his shield, but as his partner in ways the world now knew too well. One night, after a rally where the crowd chanted his name like a drumbeat, we collapsed together in his hotel room, laughter spilling out of us, raw and unguarded. He looked at me, his hair damp with sweat, his tie hanging loose, and whispered, "Whatever happens next, I already won." And when I kissed him then, slow and deep, I knew exactly what he meant. Election day came with rain, gray skies, long lines, tension in every face. We spent the hours in a cramped office, staffers glued to screens, maps flashing red and blue. When the results started to roll in, my stomach knotted. Too close. Far too close. Then, as the night stretched long and unbearable, the final numbers hit the screen. Ethan Hale won. By a margin so thin it would be debated for years. The room erupted. Cheers, tears, shouts of victory. Cameras flashed. Reporters flooded in. But I only saw him. Ethan turned through the chaos, found me across the room, and for a moment, it was just us. The man I had sworn to protect. The man I had broken every rule for. The man who looked at me like I was the reason he had survived. And when he crossed the room, when he pulled me into his arms in front of everyone, cameras clicking like gunfire, I didn't care anymore. Because for once, the world could see us exactly as we were. Together. Victory wasn't the ending, it was the beginning of a harder war. The morning after Ethan's razor-thin win, the headlines screamed history. Hale shatters barriers. Love and politics collide. Governor-elect Hale and his bodyguard partner face scrutiny. Some papers celebrated him, calling him brave, authentic, a symbol of progress. Others sharpened their knives, painting us as scandal, sin, or weakness. And in the middle of all that noise, Ethan and I sat side by side in a quiet hotel room, still in yesterday's clothes, staring at the city skyline like two men who had run a marathon and found themselves at the starting line of another. "You should be sleeping," I murmured. He smiled faintly, exhaustion in his eyes but fire still burning there. "Can't. My brain won't stop. I keep thinking, what now?" I reached over, resting my hand on his. "Now, you lead, and I protect you. Same as always." His fingers tightened around mine, grounding himself in that promise. The transition weeks were a blur, meetings, appointments, endless interviews. Every step was dissected by the media, every word spun into headlines. For me, it meant constant vigilance. Not just against physical threats, though those multiplied by the day, but against the subtler ones. Whispers in the State House, smiles with hidden knives, aides who looked at me like I was a weakness waiting to be exploited. But Ethan refused to hide me. When he was sworn in, hand on the Bible, crowds gathered on the steps of the Capitol, he didn't just thank his staff and supporters. He turned, his hand brushing mine, subtle but unmistakable. "This journey has been brutal and beautiful," he said into the microphone, his voice steady, carrying across the crowd. "And I could not have made it without the man who stood by my side through all of it. Ryan Cole." The applause was thunderous. I kept my face professional, my posture straight. But inside I was undone. Of course, not everyone cheered. Protesters gathered outside the governor's mansion with signs that called us abominations. Legislators whispered about the bodyguard boyfriend in closed rooms. Editorials questioned if Ethan's judgment was compromised because of me. There were nights when it nearly broke him. Nights when he'd come home after meetings that had drained him dry, collapse on the couch and stare at the ceiling. "I knew it wouldn't be easy," he said once, voice hollow. "But I didn't think they'd try to destroy me just for loving someone." I sat beside him, silent for a moment, then said, "They're not trying to destroy you for loving me. They're trying to destroy you because they're scared of anyone who refuses to fit their mold. You scare them, Ethan. That's why you're going to win." He turned his head then, eyes shining in the low light. "You always know what to say." I shook my head. "No, I just know you." And then I kissed him, slow and steady, reminding him that beyond the noise, there was still us. Months passed. Slowly, something shifted. The protests grew smaller. The scandals lost their sting. People began to see him not just as the man with the bodyguard boyfriend, but as a governor who kept his promises, who fought for schools, healthcare, and jobs with the same fire he had fought for me. And through it all, we built a life. Not flashy, not perfect, but ours. I still lived half in the shadow. Security never ends, but our quiet moments became my salvation. Cooking dinner together in the mansion's kitchen at midnight. Jogging side by side through empty streets before dawn. Falling asleep on the couch with his head on my shoulder. The TV flickering forgotten. The world could say what it wanted. This was ours. It wasn't until nearly a year later that we came face to face with the thing that had started it all. We were at a small fundraiser, tucked in the corner of a library-turned-event hall, when a young woman approached Ethan, clutching a notebook. "Governor Hale," she said shyly. I'm the one who wrote that story. The fanfic. The one they found." I stiffened, instincts flaring. But Ethan just blinked, surprised. She looked between us, cheeks red. "I'm sorry if it caused you trouble. I saw something in the way you two looked at each other, and I thought, maybe I wasn't imagining it." Ethan glanced at me, then back at her, and he smiled. A real, warm, grateful smile. "You weren't imagining it," he said gently. Her eyes widened, tears glinting. "Then I'm glad. I'm so glad." And just like that, I realized that what had once felt like exposure, humiliation, was also the spark that had forced us to stop lying. A story that had been written by a stranger had given us our own. Later that night, when we were alone, Ethan leaned against the window, looking out at the city lights. "Funny, isn't it?" he said. "A piece of fiction gave us our truth." I stepped behind him, wrapping my arms around his waist, resting my chin on his shoulder. "I don't care how it started. I just care that we're here now." He turned his head slightly, eyes soft. "Do you ever regret it, Ryan? Letting yourself love me?" I kissed the curve of his neck, my voice steady. "Never. Not once. The only thing I'd regret is if I hadn't." And in that moment, I knew the war wasn't over. There would always be battles, politics, prejudice, the weight of public eyes. But as long as we stood together, as long as his hand found mine in the dark, we could face all of it. The night ended in quiet laughter, the kind that came from relief, from love, from knowing we had survived storms and still chosen each other. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a shadow, like a weapon, like a man whose only worth was in the fight. I felt seen. I felt loved. I felt his. And that was more than victory. That was home. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.